Close your eyes for just 1 second. Picture this. You are standing in the middle of the busy train station in your city. Thousands of people pushing past you. A siren screams somewhere above. A stranger makes sudden eye contact, then looks away. Your heart rate just ticked up. Your jaw tightens slightly. Your eyes are scanning exits without you even realizing it. Now ask yourself this: why? You are not in danger. No predator is nearby. You are just commuting. This is your ordinary Tuesday morning. So why does your body feel like something terrible is about to happen? The answer will change how you see every city, every crowd, every moment of daily stress forever. You aren't stressed by modern life. Your brain genuinely believes it is still being hunted. Welcome. And for the next 30 minutes your mind is about to short-circuit itself. Let's establish the problem. The human brain, the one you are using right now to process this video, was not designed for the world you live in. It was not built for skyscrapers, subway systems, or smartphone notifications. It was built for the African savannah, approximately 200,000 years ago. For the vast majority of human existence, nearly 999% of our evolutionary history, humans lived in small, mobile groups of 20 to 150 people. We tracked animals. We foraged. We read the landscape for threats. We knew every face around us. We knew exactly which rustling in the grass meant danger, and which did not. And then in the blink of an evolutionary eye everything changed. About 150 years ago, the industrial megacity exploded into existence. Today, over 44 billion people live in urban environments. Cities like Lagos, Tokyo, and Mexico City hold more humans than entire countries did just a century ago. Your brain never got the update. Think of it this way. Imagine taking a high-performance computer from the year 1995, an old, robust machine perfectly optimized for tasks of that era, and then forcing it to run software written in 2026. The hardware might still turn on. It might still process, but it will lag. It will glitch. It will interpret modern tasks through the only filters it has ancient ones. That is your brain in a modern city. The specific region we need to talk about is the amygdala, a small, almond-shaped structure buried deep in the brain's temporal lobe. Neuroscientists call it the brain's alarm system. It has been doing the same job for hundreds of millions of years, long before we were even human. Its job is ruthlessly simple: detect potential threats, trigger a survival response, deal with consequences later. When your ancestors heard a sudden loud snap in the bushes, the amygdala didn't stop to think, is that a predator or the wind? It fired immediately, flooded the body with adrenaline and cortisol, forced a split-second fight or flight decision. The ancestors who paused to think it over didn't survive to become your ancestors. Here is where it gets fascinating and deeply uncomfortable. Your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a leopard leaping from a tree and an ambulance siren screaming past you on a Monday morning. To your ancient neural hardware, a sudden, loud, approaching sound means one thing: something is coming for you, and you need to react now. The result: every time a siren, a car horn, a construction jackhammer, or a stranger shouting pierces your environment, your body physically prepares to fight or flee. Your pupils dilate, blood rushes from your digestive system to your muscles, your heartbeat spikes, and then nothing happens. No predator, no threat, just the city, just Tuesday. Scientists call this phenomenon evolutionary mismatch. Your biological hardware is running a survival program designed for one environment, but deployed inside a completely different one. The ancient software is still working perfectly. It's just solving the wrong problem. Your brain is not broken. It is simply a 200,000-year-old solution, cunning in a world that is only 150 years old. and the cumulative effect of triggering that survival response dozens, sometimes hundreds of times per day, with no actual threat to resolve, is what we call chronic urban stress. It is not weakness, it is not anxiety disorder. It is your brain doing exactly what it was built to do in a world it was never built for. Let me show you something that will permanently change how you look at any city. Your brain, as we've established, was optimized for the savanna, a specific type of environment with specific visual features, open grasslands with scattered tree clusters, high ground for visibility, dense vegetation that could conceal predators, narrow game trails that forced vulnerable passage. Now look at a modern city. Really look at it. Skyscrapers rising hundreds of feet on either side, forming sheer walls with no escape, sound echoing and rebounding, making it impossible to locate its source. Narrow alleys between buildings tight, shadowed corridors where peripheral vision fails, and anything could be waiting around the corner. Your brain is not experiencing architecture. It is experiencing terrain, the tall-walled canyon, the dense brush of the crowd, the shadowed alcove where something might be hiding. Every architectural feature of a modern city maps almost perfectly onto the environments your ancestors feared, most the places where ambushes happened. This is not a coincidence, and it is not metaphor. This is direct neurological pattern matching. Now add the humans. At any moment on a busy city street, you are surrounded by dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of strangers. Your brain has a dedicated neural system for processing faces, the fusiform face area, that has been scanning and cataloging human expressions since before language existed. On the savannah, every face you encountered belonged to someone you knew, a tribe member, a trusted person, a known enemy. Your social processing system had a manageable dataset. In a city, that system is catastrophically overloaded. Researchers call the constant, unconscious scanning of strangers' faces for signs of aggression fringe awareness. You are doing it right now if you're watching this in a public place. Scanning the periphery, noting micro-expressions, flagging anomalies, cataloging exits. Your brain is performing threat assessments on thousands of individuals per hour, every single one of them a stranger, which to your ancient hardware registers as a potential unknown. On the savannah, a stranger was a threat until proven otherwise. In the city, you are surrounded by millions of strangers. Your brain can never fully clear. This is why many people report feeling perpetually uneasy in dense urban environments without being able to articulate why. There is no obvious threat. No one is attacking them, but the background hum of low-level social paranoia never fully switches off. There is also a spatial dimension to this that urban planners are only beginning to understand. Your brain has a deeply wired preference for a specific type of environment called a prospect refuge landscape. We need to think simultaneously to feel safe. Prospect, the ability to see far into the distance, to spot threats before they reach us, and refuge, a protected position behind us, a place we cannot be approached from the rear. Think of the classic human comfort position. You've probably chosen it without knowing why. A restaurant table with your back against the wall, a seat that faces the entrance, a park bench overlooking an open field rather than surrounded by dense trees. That is prospect refuge seeking. That is the savannah brain, quietly running its safety algorithms, choosing the position your ancient ancestors would have chosen at the edge of a clearing. Cities, by their very design, systematically deny us both. You cannot see to the horizon. You cannot put your back against a wall when you're surrounded on all sides. The city is an endless sensory maze, beautiful, magnificent, and profoundly, neurologically unsettling. And this brings us to something important that we will return to at the end of this video, because the cure to this problem, at least partially, has been staring at us in our parks and green spaces all along. Here is something nobody talks about when they discuss city stress. Your morning commute is, neurologically speaking, one of the most cognitively demanding activities a human being can perform, not because of the tasks involved, not because of the logistics, but because of what your brain has to do to keep you alive. Your visual cortex, the largest single sensory processing region in the human brain, is wired for a very specific type of motion detection, the kind of motion that matters in a world without vehicles. When your ancestors saw movement, they needed to calculate one critical thing instantly. Is it moving toward me? And if so, how fast? From what angle? And how long do I have? This is called predictive motion processing, and it is hardwired into your visual cortex at a level so deep it operates entirely outside your conscious awareness. Now drop a 2,000 kilogram vehicle moving at 60 kilometers per hour into your visual field. Your brain has never seen anything like this in its evolutionary history. It has no pre-existing template for a car, so it uses the closest template it has: a large, fast-moving creature, a megafaunal predator, a charging bison, a stampeding elephant. Every time a vehicle approaches you at speed, your subcortical visual system initiates a full threat trajectory calculation. It is computing intercept paths, estimating closing speed, preparing a physical evasion response, and it does this for every single vehicle in your visual field simultaneously. During a typical urban commute, your brain may perform this megafauna tracking calculation hundreds of times per hour. Multiply that across 5 days a week, across a working lifetime, and you begin to understand why urban populations show measurably higher rates of vigilance dysregulation than rural populations. But the cars are only part of it. Research from environmental psychologists estimates that a person navigating a modern urban environment processes somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 distinct visual stimuli per hour. Advertisements, signs, faces, vehicles, lights, screens, architectural details, each one demanding a micro slice of attentional processing. Compare this to the savannah, where visual processing was largely dedicated to a handful of meaningful signals: the movement of prey, the shape of a predator, the location of water, the position of the sun. Your attentional system was not designed for 10,000 inputs per hour. It was designed for a world where most of the landscape stayed still, and the things that moved were the things that mattered. The consequence of processing this artificial sensory flood is what neuroscientists call dopamine depletion through overstimulation. The city does not bore your dopamine system. It exhausts it the way a muscle tears under too much weight. Dopamine is often mischaracterized as the pleasure neurotransmitter. Its actual primary function is salience detection. It helps your brain figure out what matters, what to pay attention to, what to pursue. In a natural environment, a dopamine spike meant something important had happened. Food was found, a threat was avoided, a social bonding moment occurred. These spikes were meaningful, rare, and motivating. In a city, artificial stimuli, flashing ads, notification pings, the visual complexity of a storefront trigger dopamine responses constantly. The signal becomes noise. Your brain's ability to distinguish what actually matters from what is merely loud becomes systematically degraded. And then there is cortisol. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone, the chemical fuel of the fight or flight response. In a healthy biological context, cortisol spikes sharply in response to a real threat, drives the survival response, and then falls sharply when the threat resolves. But in an urban environment, cortisol levels never fully return to baseline. Studies of urban commuters using continuous cortisol monitoring have found that the stress hormone remains chronically elevated throughout the entire working day, with noticeable spikes during commuting itself that mirror, almost exactly, the cortisol signature of a failed predatory hunt in animal studies. The failed hunt, think about that, not the successful hunt which ends with relief, reward, and rest, but the failed one where the body expended enormous energy in pursuit of a goal that was never resolved, that biological signature of frustrated, unresolved effort, of physical mobilization without completion. That is what your daily commute looks like in your blood chemistry. In 1992, British anthropologist Robin Dunbar published a paper that would go on to become one of the most cited concepts in behavioral science. He had been studying the relationship between brain size and social group size across primate species, and what he found was elegantly simple. The size of the neocortex, the brain's social processing region, correlates directly with the maximum size of stable social groups each species can maintain. For humans, that number comes to approximately 150 people. That is the maximum number of individuals your brain can track simultaneously as meaningful social relationships, people whose names you know, whose moods you can read, whose intentions you can reasonably predict. In a small tribal community, everyone is within that 150. Every face is mapped. Every individual is known. The social landscape is legible and predictable. Now put that brain in a city of 10 million people. From your brain's perspective, you are permanently, chronically surrounded by strangers. Not a few strangers, millions of them. More unknown individuals in a single subway car than your ancestors might encounter in an entire year. And here is the critical distinction. Unknown does not mean neutral to your prehistoric neural hardware. Unknown means unclassified. Unclassified means potentially dangerous. Your threat assessment system runs on a simple default, clear until proven safe, but never fully safe until personally known. This generates a state researchers have named chronic low-level social vigilance. It is not full paranoia. It is not fear. It is a persistent, below-conscious alertness, a background hum of social threat monitoring that never fully disengages. And then, at a point in history that would have seemed like science fiction to our ancestors, we added a second social world on top of the physical one. The digital world. Today, the average person scrolls through social media content equivalent to roughly 300 feet of text, video, and images per day. In that feed are faces, thousands of them, some known, most strangers, many performing, some attacking, many seeking validation, some pretending, all of them demanding a social assessment from a brain whose social processing system was built for 150 people maximum. Social media did not create social anxiety. It fed it to a system already overwhelmed, and then doubled the bandwidth. And in 2026, we have added yet another layer to this. Augmented reality. AR overlays in public spaces, whether through dedicated glasses or projected digital signage, are now fragmenting our spatial attention in ways neuroscience is still scrambling to fully document. A person navigating a major city in 2026 may simultaneously be processing the physical environment, a heads-up display providing navigation and notifications, digital advertisement overlays triggered by proximity, and persistent social identity markers attached to physical locations and buildings. Your brain is trying to run a social legibility algorithm. Who is everyone around me, and what are their intentions, across both physical and digital dimensions simultaneously. The cognitive load is not additive, it is exponential. There is one more urban social phenomenon worth examining in detail, one that feels counterintuitive at first. The urban non-look. Any person who has lived in a major city knows this phenomenon. The deliberate non-acknowledgement of strangers in close proximity. You can be packed into an elevator with 8 people and make eye contact with no one. You can ride a subway for 40 minutes pressed against other human bodies without a single human exchange. This is a sophisticated learned behavior, an urban social contract of mutual non-engagement that reduces social friction in high-density environments. It is civilized and practical, but your amygdala has no idea what an urban social contract is. To your ancient social processing system, a group of humans deliberately averting their gaze and refusing to acknowledge your presence sends a very specific social signal, the same signal it would have sent on the savannah. You are being excluded. You are being treated as non-existent. You are being socially rejected. Or worse, everyone around you is ignoring something they have all silently agreed to ignore, which in a predator environment is the social signal for imminent danger. The result is that one of the most normative urban experiences, simply being in a crowd of strangers, triggers a low-level social threat response in virtually every human brain. Not because anything is wrong, because your brain is pattern matching correctly and then applying those patterns to the completely wrong context. Now, after everything we have just walked through, the amygdala hijack, the concrete savannah, the traffic trauma, the social overload, you might be asking a very reasonable question. What do we actually do about it? The answer is not to abandon cities. Cities are extraordinary. They are the engines of human collaboration, creativity, and civilization. The answer is to understand your brain well enough to work with it instead of against it. Let's start with what might be the most powerful and most underused neurological tool in the modern urban toolkit. Tool number 1: attention restoration theory and green architecture. In the 1980s, environmental psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan developed what became known as attention restoration theory. Their central finding was elegant. Natural environments restore depleted attentional capacity in ways that built environments simply cannot. The distinction they identified is between 2 types of attention: directed attention, the forced, effortful focus required to navigate urban environments, filter stimuli, process traffic, manage social interaction, and involuntary attention, the gentle, effortless fascination that natural environments produce. The way you can watch waves break for 20 minutes without effort. The way a forest path holds your attention without demanding it. Natural environments give directed attention systems the chance to recover because they engage a completely different, evolutionarily older attentional circuit that requires no effort and generates no stress. Modern neuroscience has since confirmed this at a biological level. Studies show that even 20 minutes in a natural environment measurably reduces cortisol levels, slows heart rate, lowers blood pressure, and shifts brain activity from sympathetic nervous system dominance, the fight or flight mode, to parasympathetic dominance, rest, recovery, safety. What is remarkable is how little nature is required to produce this effect. Research from the University of Michigan found that just looking at photographs of natural scenes, not even being in nature, just viewing it produces measurable restoration effects. Studies from Japan on Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, have documented immune system enhancements from 2-hour nature walks that persist for up to 30 days. Forward-thinking urban architects are beginning to build this understanding directly into city design. Biophilic architecture, the intentional integration of natural elements into built environments, incorporates living walls, water features, natural light optimization, and visual connections to sky and vegetation, specifically to provide attentional restoration without requiring residents to leave the city. The most advanced cities of 2030 will not just be smart cities, they will be neurologically informed cities designed around the brain's actual operating requirements. Tool number 2. The 20-20-20 sensory reset. Every 20 minutes, for 20 seconds, look at something at least 20 meters away. The original purpose was to reduce eye strain from screens, but the neurological effect goes far deeper, shifting your visual focus from the close, cluttered, stimuli-dense foreground of urban life to a distant, open horizon. Does something specific to your threat response system. Open, distant horizons are safety signals, the prospect part of the prospect refuge system we discussed earlier. They are the visual cue brain associates with the open savanna. No predators in the visible range, escape routes clear, threat level low. 20 seconds of distant focus triggers a measurable parasympathetic shift. It is not much, but across a full day, those micro-recovery moments compound. Tool number 3. Amygdala labeling and the 90-second rule. Neuroscientist Jill Bolt Taylor documented something extraordinary, a neurological insight that has been validated repeatedly in subsequent research. The physiological component of an emotional response, the actual chemical flood of cortisol and adrenaline, lasts approximately 90 seconds. After 90 seconds, if you do not mentally re-trigger the response by continuing to think about the stressor, the body's stress chemistry physically dissipates. What extends stress responses well beyond 90 seconds is not biology, it is thought. It is the narratives we build around the stressor, the replaying, the catastrophizing, the meaning-making. There is a companion technique, validated by extensive neuroimaging research, called effect labeling, or more colloquially, name it to tame it. The simple act of verbally or mentally naming an emotional state, I notice I am feeling anxious right now, activates the prefrontal cortex, which directly inhibits amygdala activity. You are essentially engaging your rational brain to regulate your threat brain. In an urban environment, where amygdala activations happen constantly, the siren, the crowded platform, the aggressive driver, applying this technique in real time creates a practice of emotional regulation that builds cumulative resilience. Tool number 4. Social microconnection. A study from the University of British Columbia found that brief, positive social exchanges with strangers, what researchers called minimal social interactions, produce measurable increases in well-being and feelings of belonging, even for people who reported preferring solitude. The key word is positive, not conversation, not relationship. A smile, a nod, a brief moment of acknowledged shared humanity. Your brain's social threat monitoring system does not require deep friendship to deactivate. It requires acknowledgement. The difference between a face your system has flagged as unknown, unclassified, potential threat, and a face it has flagged as acknowledged, non-hostile, known quantity, can be a single moment of eye contact and a slight upward curve of the mouth. In cities where anonymous non-engagement is the norm, this is a deliberate, countercultural act, but the neurological payoff for both parties is measurable and real. Tool number 5. Neuroarchitecture of your own space. While you cannot redesign your city, you can neuroarchitect your immediate personal environment. Research on environmental psychology consistently identifies the features that shift brain state towards safety and restoration. Natural light, plants, the sound of water, warm color temperatures, open sightlines, and clear visual organization. These are not aesthetic choices, they are neurological ones. Each one signals to your ancient hardware, this is a safe territory, threat level low. Stand down, your bedroom, your workspace, your commute playlist, all of these are environmental variables that your amygdala is constantly processing. Optimizing them is not self-indulgence, it is maintenance of the instrument you use to do everything else. Let us bring all of this home. Your brain is extraordinary. It is arguably the most sophisticated information processing system to the known universe. But it is also ancient, built by pressures that no longer exist, running programs written for a world that has almost entirely disappeared. The modern city is not your enemy. It is the most ambitious thing human civilization has ever built, a monument to cooperation, ingenuity, and the extraordinary human capacity to reshape the environment. But it was built faster than biology can follow. The concrete savanna went up in 100 years. The hardware evolving to navigate it will take tens of thousands. In that gap between what our biology expects and what our environment delivers lives every stress headache, every crowd-triggered unease, every 3 a.m. cortisol spiral, every inexplicable sense of dread on an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday morning. Understanding this changes something, not everything. You will still feel the siren spike your heart rate. The crowded platform will still trigger the scanning. Your dopamine system will still be hijacked by 10,000 artificial stimuli before noon. But understanding why, knowing that your brain is not broken, that you are not weak, that you are simply the product of an extraordinary evolutionary history running in a world it was not designed to see, that understanding is the beginning of working with your biology instead of being worked over by it. The war your brain is fighting is over. Winning it just means realizing it ended and learning to stand down. Human beings built the city, and humans are adaptive in ways that no other species has demonstrated. The neuroscience of urban life is still young, but the early data suggests something hopeful. Brains raised in cities show measurable adaptations in social processing efficiency. Urban children develop more sophisticated filtering mechanisms for stimuli overload. Our attentional systems are learning slowly, generation by generation, to pass the difference between concrete canyons and real ones. We are not stuck. We are just early. 200,000 years of evolution produced a brain capable of this conversation, capable of understanding its own limitations, capable of choosing to respond to a siren with curiosity instead of alarm. If only for a moment. That is not a small thing. That is the entire game. If this video shifted something in how you see yourself, in how you see the city you move through every single day, then we have done exactly what we set out to do. Understanding your brain is not an academic exercise. It is the most practical thing you can do. I want to know, where in this video did something click for you? Was it the amygdala and the ambulance siren, the concrete savanna, Dunbar's number, and the city of 10 million strangers? Tell me in the comments specifically, which moment changed something. If you know someone who lives in a city and carries that low, invisible, constant tension they cannot quite name, share this video with them. Not to alarm them, but to offer them what understanding always offers: relief. And if you want to go deeper on the neuroscience of human behavior in the modern world, how your environment shapes your thinking, your emotions, your decisions in ways you are almost never aware of, subscribe, because that is exactly what this channel is about. The next video is going to break your brain in a completely different direction, and I cannot wait to see you there.